The rules of wheelchair basketball are broadly similar to basketball. The court is the same size, the basket is at the same height, and the scoring is completely the same. 2 points for a regular shot from open play, a single point for each successful free throw, and 3 points for a shot from behind the arc. Players move the ball around the court by passing or dribbling. Now they are required to throw or bounce the ball after every 2 pushes of the wheels on their chairs. Any more and players are penalized for traveling. During play, the total on-court point value for each team of 5 players cannot exceed 14. Each team consists of 12 players with no more than 5 on the court. In terms of positions, every player is assigned a point value based on their functional ability. These range from 1.0 to 4.5. Now, while the 2 sports share many similarities and differences, the key to success remains the same. Play with passion, heart, and hustle, and the outcome will always be rewarding. Because at the end of the day, it's a sport that moves you.
Whoever wants to learn how to referee wheelchair basketball. And first, we thought we'd tell you where wheelchair basketball is played in Canada. In British Columbia, the places that the most games are played are Vancouver Lower Mainland, Victoria. There's only one referee board in the province that gives the game to referees and assigns a game. Different province, different region, different way to assign, like able-bodied, it's the same thing. Alberta, it's like 3-4 zones. Grand Prairie, Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge, multiple boards. So it's not only one one entity that gives the games to all the referees around the province. Saskatchewan and Regina only. They only have games at those places. In Manitoba, few games, mainly local games, and it's only in Winnipeg. So Sean is following good. In Ontario, there's only one referee board assigning all Ontario. It's Mr. Trevor Kerr that assigns those games. And well, basketball is being played in Toronto and in Ottawa. There's Toronto meaning the big Toronto area. In Quebec, there's only one referee board, and it's across the province. I assigned this division, and currently we have about 18 to 25 referees that do wheelchair basketball. In Nova Scotia, it's Halifax mainly and Truro that have, and there's only one referee board also. New Brunswick, Moncton, Fredericton, one referee board for the province. PEI, Charlottetown only. St. John, only in St. John, and like Manitoba, mainly just local games. And there's some specification for the wheelchair to be so that the game is fair for everybody. So nobody can have a 5 feet wheelchair and try to dunk the ball while the others are too small to do it. So mainly it goes, we'll talk later about the classification of players, but the highest a chair can be, it's 63 centimeters. We have wheels that need to be 69 centimeters or lower. And in Canada, this is the responsibility of the referee to make sure that all chairs are legal. Internationally, when we go to international competition, the referee doesn't take care of that anymore. It's the commissioner at the table that takes care of that. Can switch. It works a little bit like hockey for any games played in wheelchair basketball. For those who know hockey, when a coach used to think that the stick would be illegal, he would ask the referee to measure the stick, and if he was correct, the other team would get a penalty. If not, he would get the penalty. Pretty much in Canada, it's pretty much the same because we don't have any commissioners that make chair checks on a random chair checks. So what we need to do is if a coach asks you to measure a chair, you take your tape measure out of your bag and you measure the chair. That's why you need to know the measurements of the chair. And if he's correct, the player is disqualified. He needs to leave the gym. And if he's not, he gets a technical foul, a direct technical foul to the coach. Okay, we'll go rule by rule, just so we know the differences between the two. Player falling on the floor is more frequent in wheelchair basketball. The higher the level of the players, the more players fall on the floor and they get back right away in their chair. So it's basically the same thing as FIBA for the main part of the rule. In case of danger, which it happens more often, we'll stop it right away. Let's say it's in the restricted area, the referee will stop the game right away. So you need to know basically your 24-second rule really well. If a defensive player falls down, you stop the play, so you need to put back the 24-second to 14 or 24, depending where the play was stopped. Some players can get up real quickly, but if the players falls in the key, we'll have no choice to stop it because sometimes when they get up, they put their hands on the floor and the other players could wheel on their hands, and it's to protect them from injuries.
Player down in the key, we have to stop immediately.
See, as soon as the player fell in the key, the referee on the baseline stopped the play, even though the ball was going towards the hoop. We cannot let the play finish because that way the player would get injured, and the defensive player could not go play defense on the guy or the girl going at the basket. We have another video, another example of that. In this example, the girl will fall out of her chair before the player tries to inbounce the ball. So we need to make sure we stop it right away because wheelchair basketball is played 5-on-5, but if they fall during the play and they're outside of any players that could injure them, we're gonna let the play finish 5-on-4 until the defense gets the ball or the offensive team retrieves the ball outside the three-point arc and is not attacking the basket.
Play stop because red 5 fell on the floor alone. Take a look at ball handler that doesn't go all the way outside to put it in. She's inbounding the ball inside the court, but the play was stopped by the referee.
We talked about it. If a player falls on the floor, we need to reset to 14 or 24 second. Question here was that, so you just need to know the answer. If it's in the front court and it's between 14 and 24, we will then not reset the shot clock. If it's under 14, we will reset to 14. If it's in the back court, obviously, just like a kickball, we would reset it to 24 seconds right away to give the offense time to get in, settle in the front court. As you can imagine, there won't be any kickball in wheelchair basketball. Kickball is slightly replaced by a player playing the ball with his wheelchair. Let's say the ball is rolling on the floor. Player that would push the ball with his wheelchair, it would be the same violation as kicking the ball as an able-bodied player. Another difference with able-bodied, the only thing that can touch the floor for a wheelchair basketball player is the 4 or 5 wheels he has on his wheelchair. And then if he's falling down, he could put one hand on the floor and still hold on to the ball. This is legal. Any other part of his wheelchair or his body that touches the floor, it's a violation, and it's called an advantage violation. I think we have a video of the advantage. The player is going alone in this case, and he tries to stop, and his chair falls. Then he touches the ball. It's an advantage violation. The player fell alone. See, he gets up alone, and sometimes other players come to help. And we'll learn later that once a player falls like this, if it's a low classification player, the other team will try to keep him in his front court to have an advantage going back the other side. Okay, act of shooting. There's a new with the new FIBA rule. It's been changed to make it more like we call it here in Canada, because other parts of the world were not calling it as we are calling it here. So basically, wheelchair basketball is pretty much the same. Continuation is part, as long as a player starts his movement towards the basket, he's allowed to shoot, and if he's fouled during that action, he goes directly to the foul line. Able Body has changed the rule to make it clearer that when a player is in his 2 steps to go put a layup in, he is in the act of shooting as soon as he retrieves his ball. That's a new wording they've put in the rule. Wheelchair basketball is very much the same, and it was like that always. So as soon as a player gathers the ball in a continuous motion to go to the hoop, there's no layup in wheelchair basketball, but we allow continuation. Of course, a player cannot take the ball in his 2 hands and say, I'm going from center line to put the ball in and I'm shooting. But, you know, it's at the judgment of the referee. Like able body, we don't have any airborne players in wheelchair basketball. They will tilt on one side or the other. They will lift their wheels if they're holding their hands, but rarely to shoot the ball. So what we have is a follow through. A wheelchair basketball player that shoots the ball will do a follow through, like any able-bodied player that knows how to shoot, until the hand of the player that shoots gets back on his wheel. Is considered to be airborne. So any contact during that phase of play where a player is shooting and has not regained possession of his wheels is considered on the act of shooting. Yes, like to be on the act of shooting in wheelchair basketball, you don't need to let the ball go. We have something that when a player is inside the key or close to the basket and gets the ball in his hand, and he has the motion to shoot and he gets fouled, even though he doesn't release the ball, he will still be in the act of shooting, and the referee will give him shots to shoot at the free throw line. player gets the ball and he just wants to shoot, but can't release the ball, but it's still in the act of shooting, so the player will go to the line. Notice that there's, I would say, maybe 60–70% of the fouls that are called that are related to the wheelchair. Not specifically like able body shot on a hand or anything like that. So we need, with wheelchair basketball, we need to focus on the wheelchairs to know where the fouls occur. Okay, number of points are awarded to players. Both rear wheels have to be behind the lines that the player is shooting. We'll see example in a few seconds. So if you're shooting from the foul line, you need to have your big wheels, the wheels where you're sitting behind the line, because we want to give a fair chance to wheelchair basketball players like able body, that when a player is shooting able body, his feet are on the line, so he's straight just behind the line. If you would say to a wheelchair basketball player that the small wheels in front would be the wheels that counts when he shoots, he would be shooting from further away from the line. So we'll see example right after. Okay, as we see on this picture, the ball has just left the hands of the shooter. His big wheels are behind the line. So if the ball would go in, this would be a 3-point attempt. This would be a 3-point field goal. So we need to, the referee that's closest to the play needs to, well, in this case would be, I don't know where, if it's 3-person officiating. So it's the trail or center still that decides if it's a 2 or a 3. Sometimes in the corner, the lead will have to help because we need to be really precise. Some wheelchair, now you see, we can see between the wheels because the spokes are not full or they're not colored in those chairs playing. Sometimes we'll see in local games that we cannot see between the spokes. So it's harder for the referees to decide if the field goal was 2 or 3 points. So that's why we really need to have 1 or 2 sets of eyes on the play. Foul line, we see the small wheels are on the line. This is perfectly legal. It's only the back wheels that need to be behind this line. So you see, you have a feel here. The player sitting right there on the line is just like an able-bodied player that would shoot, like his feet would be right there. And the position he is right now, he's shooting just like an able-bodied player would be shooting the distance between. Throw-in procedure, all right? A slight difference with able-bodied basketball. An offensive player is not allowed to enter the restricted area during an out-of-bounds situation until the referee puts the ball at the disposal of the player taking the throw-in. This is a major difference between the two sports. It's only not to give an advantage to a tall player that would sit inside the key and nobody can move him. So he needs to be outside the restricted area. And as soon as the referee there, Mr. Lapointe, that's right there in the picture, gives the ball, all white players are allowed to enter the key. Like able-bodied, there's no restriction in time inside the key. You can be there for 4 seconds if you want, while the ball is outside. As soon as the ball gets in, the same restriction applies like able-bodied for the 3 seconds. We'll see it later.
There's 2 pieces to the throw-in rule, and this is the first piece of it. Luckily, we have an opportunity in wheelchair basketball for preventative officiating, and for us, and this happens more when the referee is throwing the ball on the baseline, but it could be any of the referees. we have the opportunity that if you see a player in the restricted area while you still have the ball and you look up and that player is there, you do not have to throw the ball in. You can go ahead and ask that player to leave. So that's a big difference. That's a big difference compared to, say, this play right here, where the referee is about to throw the ball in, and if someone's already in the key, that's going to be a violation on the white team. Compared to if they've still got the ball in their hand and they look up, or let's just say the center official looks up and sees that there's a player in the restricted area, you can blow your whistle ahead of time to get the player out of there. Obviously, the less distractions we have in wheelchair basketball, the better it is. So violation throwing the ball at an opponent. So this is the next one that is very, very different than FIBA basketball. As we know, when anyone's playing basketball, if you're going out of bounds and you think you're going out of bounds, the first thing you're going to do is throw it off a player. And if it goes out of bounds off Team B, then Team A gets the ball. Huge difference in wheelchair basketball. Wheelchair basketball, and we'll give you a good example on this one here. A player cannot deliberately throw or tap the ball onto an opponent's, including the chair, thus causing it to go out of bounds. The ball shall be awarded to the opponents, even though it was last touched by the team. Really, the biggest reason this rule is in wheelchair basketball is because of safety. You don't know at all when a ball's coming at you, and if you're an athlete in a wheelchair, you could be very vulnerable. So that's the biggest reason they put that rule in. Now, the tricky part about this, obviously, is if you're going out of bounds and you don't see the player and you're just physically trying to throw the ball back in bounds, then that ball goes back to the offensive team. This is only when it's deliberate. That's probably the key. Deliberately throwing or tap. That's probably the key word. And this happens probably in a game, 1 or 2 times in a game. And many times the referees don't call it correctly, but the ball should be going back, should be going to the defensive team in this situation. So here's a case, a comments and interpretation. Player A5 successfully controls the ball, which is rolling towards the boundary line, but is on the verge of exiting the court. However, he intentionally throws the ball against B4's wheelchair, causing the ball to go out of bounds. The key word here is intentionally. The official awards Team B the ball for a throw-in. Is this the correct procedure? Yes, Article 23.24 and Situation 23.24. And we won't get into that, but you can look it up in your time and read both the article and also the situation. But this does happen in wheelchair basketball, and this definitely needs to be called correctly. Other differences: no double dribble in wheelchair basketball, but we do have other differences that are really key in wheelchair basketball. So you can, as long as you're bringing the ball up, you can dribble it with both hands, which is, anyone that's played wheelchair basketball, it's very tricky to do. You need to be very athletic to not only wheel your chair, but also dribble the ball. So this is the big difference when it comes to a travel compared to not a travel in FIBA basketball. So of course, in FIBA we all know what it is for travel. In wheelchair basketball, we have some differences. So Article 25: the number of pushes while holding the ball shall not exceed 2 pushes, which is easy to say, but very difficult to catch because the players are so good now that they will trick a referee. So watching it is very, very important. Whichever of the three referees or two referees is closest to the ball. Breaking a wheel without a backward or forward movement of the hand or hands does not constitute a push. So if you're wheeling the chair and you quickly stop and brake, as long as you're not moving backward or forward, that is not a push. And that's really important to know because of the pivot movement, which is the next piece of this difference for wheelchair basketball. Any pivot movements shall be considered part of the dribble and are limited to 2 consecutive pushes without dribbling the ball. So in wheelchair basketball, if you are moving forward or backwards, that is considered a push, which is different than breaking a wheel without moving backward or forward. Now, we're not going to split hairs here, obviously, especially if we're officiating domestic or starting wheelchair basketball. We're going to try to help the players out, but at the higher level where Sebastian currently referees and I used to referee or watching it as a supervisor, I'll tell you right now, the players are so tricky. The comparison to FIBA basketball with the Euro step, that's prevalent in stand-up basketball, very similar to this. The players are so tricky right now getting that extra push.
3 pushes, starts from the trail and goes towards the center. In this case, trail stays with the play because he sees the start of the play. 1, 2, even though it's in center side now, trail has to stay with it and continue counting even though it's in center side now, but center has not been watching the start of the play. 3 pushes violation, excellent call. We have pivot, 1, 2, 3. 3 pushes. Go back.
To this, as long as the player releases the ball after the 2 pushes, then we're okay. So even though she or he may push the wheelchair again, as long as she releases the ball to the floor after 2 pushes, then we're good. We're in a legal situation. Let's see if we can see this one a little bit. 3 seconds is a difference too, because it applies to the entire court, not just the front court for FIBA basketball. And again, as Seb mentioned, it's a huge advantage if you can have a player in the key especially a 4.5 player, that's a huge advantage before you even start. So this is why IWBF put this rule in, that it's on the entire court and not just the front court when it comes to when 3 seconds start. Very key in wheelchair basketball here. A player who is blocked by 2 chairs and who is trying to get out of the restricted area shall not be called for 3 seconds. And I'm going to stop after this one, but obviously this is a huge difference from stand-up basketball, because in stand-up basketball, you go in the key, you set a screen, you get out, you have your 2 legs, you can run out. Well, in wheelchair basketball, unfortunately, sometimes there's a chair that gets in the way. So as long as you're not involved in the play and you're trying to get out of the key and not gain an advantage, which is a big piece of this rule here, and you're making an attempt, we are fine with that, of not calling it 3 in the key. Now, when you're saying gain an advantage, what does that mean? That could mean I'm setting a screen for my offensive partner. I set a screen, I'm still in the key, and all of a sudden I roll back towards the basket and I'm in the key. Very similar to stand-up basketball. I started off in the key, I'm in the key. That's a huge advantage when you're involved. Another one is in wheelchair basketball is setting a pick. If I get my chair in front of somebody, it doesn't matter if you're a 4.5 or a 1-point player, you're not going to go around that chair that easy. You're going to have to work. So that's another advantage of wheelchair basketball, to be careful with 3 seconds in the key. Those are probably the 2 biggest ones, the pick and roll, and then obviously blocking somebody in the key when you've been in the key already.
Three-second violation.
It's basically identical to FIBA, except one exception. And again, I love my word here, which, all right, that is not good vocabulary, even in English. 28.14, which is throwing the ball off a player and retrieving it, just like we saw in 23.2 that we saw before. So I'll give you an example here. We are coming up the court, and we're still in the back court, meaning not all 5 wheels and the ball are in the front court. And I'm in the back court, and I have an opponent that's in the front court, and I'm about to get called for an 8-second violation. Okay, I'm about to get called for an 8-second, and I know that, and I throw it off my opponent who's in the front court. Even though they're in the front court, I throw it off my opponent, and then the ball comes to the back court. That's the big difference in wheelchair basketball, is that's still considered 8 seconds. That's the big difference in wheelchair basketball, is this one specific situation. In regular basketball, you can throw it off a player. But in wheelchair basketball, we still continue the 8-second count, even though it hits somebody on the front court. Again, number 1 rule: safety. That's the biggest thing. The rest of it is the same. Player must have 4 or 5 wheels in the front court as well as the ball, and that's the 1 wheel in the back. Or I guess potentially we could have 6 wheels now, because there could be 2 of them in the back, but more or less, it's usually the one wheel in the back and the four other wheels and then the ball. A1, a throw-in pass from A4 from Team A's backcourt touches B5's wheelchair. Should the 8-second count begin immediately? Same as FIBA. Yes, because on a throw-in, as soon as it's touched by anyone on the court, whether it's the defensive team or the offensive team in the backcourt, we start the 8-second count. So no difference. And I think that was one of the questions on the FIBA exam, this year also. Ball returned to the backcourt, very similar to stand-up basketball. A team is in control of a live ball in its front court when all parts of the wheelchair are in the front court when a player is dribbling, holding, or catching a ball in his front court. So again, all 5 wheels plus the ball, dribbling or holding or catching the ball in the front court. Or the ball is passed between 2 players, players of the team in its front court. Very similar to stand-up basketball.
Good no call. At center, no backcourt violation. Never goes all the way, all wheels in the front court. One, two, the wheel stays there. She jumps, but the wheel never touched the front court. So she's allowed to go back in the back court.
There's the line right there, and she's in her back wheel is in the back court, and she kind of balances, loses off balance, but she still doesn't have all the wheels in the front court, even though she's got the ball in her hand. That's not a problem at all, and this referee here is watching exactly what they're supposed to be watching. All right, but guess what? That's the first part of it. If that's about 7 seconds right now, and she passes it to the backcourt, then this referee here must know that it's 7 seconds, and we could potentially have an 8-second violation, depending on the situation. Obviously, if she passes it to her backcourt and they're still at, now they're at 8 seconds, 9 seconds, this referee could potentially call an 8-second violation. In this situation, as we mentioned, don't split hairs. If it happens so quickly, look at where the clock is right now. It's at 16 seconds and the ball is here already. Tilting. We're almost done here. Tilting. So tilting, wheelchair basketball has come a long way. Many years ago, tilting is really defined as two wheels either going sideways or going backwards or going forward. That's considered tilting. And a long time ago, this is even when I kind of originally started, that was always a technical foul, because what happened was when they were doing the rules, they didn't think players could do that. So what do? We penalize the players because we've never seen that play before, so we penalize them. So then as wheelchair basketball evolved, we went ahead and said, well, no, we can't penalize the players. Just like all of a sudden in FIBA basketball, we have the Euro step that got very successful, and they used to call that as a travel. Then the last, I don't know how many years, we said, that's a legal play. Why would we call that as a travel? So this is the same thing when, so you're going to see this in wheelchair basketball quite a bit. Either the 2 front wheels go back, or the 2 front wheels go up, or the large wheel and side wheel go on its side. Now this is all legal until they come into the other player cylinder, and I know Sebastian will talk about that on the next session in a couple weeks time, because he's going to talk about cylinder, he's going to talk about contact and a few other things. But I'm not sure you're going to be able to see this clip, but if you can, great. If not, I highly recommend to watch it, because this player right here, he's literally going to jump up, and there's not going to be much contact at all, and he's going to get the ball. So I think it's going to be tough to see, but again, I would recommend to watch that just so you know what tilting is. There's the two wheels. There's the two wheels. He doesn't even touch the player. I mean, that's how good these players are. Any questions? If you want to open up the mics, I don't know if there's any questions from anyone.
Sergio, I have a question.
Sandra, yes.
Hi. I'm just interested in wheelchair basketball. I've watched it a bit. I've refereed it a lot. My question is, like the free throw line, where the back wheels have to be behind the line, is that the same premise for out of bounds, or is it any wheel that's out of bounds?
No, out of bounds. All four wheels have to be out of bounds, or the front wheels can obviously be on the out of bounds line, because we consider that out of bounds, whether it's stand-up basketball or wheelchair. The only time we have the front wheels, as Sebastian was mentioning, in front of the free throw line and in front of the three-point line. Those are the two times. The rest of it, you have to be out of bounds. Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
This is George Tapia. On the people doing the rebound for the free throw, all the four wheels should be out of the line, out of the key.
Yes, correct. And the advantage we have in wheelchair basketball, because the chairs are so wide that the bottom space on either side, if the chair is too big, then that defensive player must have his wheels further towards the end line. If he's too big for the spot, he has to be further to the end line. And the offensive player that's in the middle, if their chair is too big, they are allowed to go in to the restricted area a little bit to fit within the area.
Okay, thank you.
And same rule with free throws. If you're one of the five players, you have to wait until the release of the ball. And if you're outside the area of the free throw, then you have to wait until it hits the rim, exactly like FIBA basketball.